On a fall Chicago campus, young and ambitious Helen Lyle, a graduate student, is immersed in the study of urban legends. Her dissertation focuses on how fears and prejudices shape modern folklore. Together with her friend and colleague Bernadette Walsh, Helen explores the stories passed on by word of mouth, the shadows that lurk in the dark corners of people's minds. One such story that has caught Helen's attention is the legend of Candyman. Candyman is a sinister figure, a ghost whose name is spoken in whispers in the poorer parts of town. It is said that if you repeat his name 5 times in front of a mirror, he will appear and brutalize the defiant. Candyman's story is rooted in racial hatred and tragic love. According to legend, he was a dark-skinned artist in the 19th century, the son of a slave who was educated and accepted in white society. He was hired to paint a portrait of a young white woman, the daughter of a wealthy planter. Passion erupted between them, forbidden and dangerous. When their liaison became known, enraged white vigilantes seized the artist, cut off his hand, and covered his body with honey so that bees would squeeze him to death. Before he died, he cursed his tormentors, promising to return for revenge. A skeptical but intrigued Helen begins her investigation, focusing on the infamous Cabrini Green Homes apartment complex where Candyman is rumored to appear most often. She learns of a recent murder that locals have linked to his name. A young woman has died in her apartment, and strange writings on the walls repeating Candyman's name have been found at the scene. Helen and Bernadette visit Cabrini Green, trying to find a logical explanation for what happened. They talk to the residents, who are frightened and reluctant to talk about Candyman. Many believe he exists and are afraid to even speak his name. Helen tries to convince them that this is just superstition, that it was committed by a common criminal who took advantage of people's fear. In one of the apartments graffitied with Candyman's name, Helen finds strange signs and symbols. She photographs them, trying to decipher them and find a connection to the legend. In the same apartment, she finds a little boy named Anthony, who tells her about Candyman and warns her of the danger. Back at the university, Helen continues her research. She explores the archives, trying to find historical corroboration for the legend of Candyman. She finds references to an artist living in Chicago in the late 19th century, whose story looks suspiciously like the legend. To prove to herself and Bernadette that Candyman does not exist, Helen decides to perform a ritual. In the bathroom of their apartment, they stand in front of the mirror and say Candyman's name 5 times. Nothing happens. Helen feels relieved and confident that she is right. But soon after, strange events begin to happen. One night when Helen is alone in her apartment, she hears strange noises. She sees shadows flickering in the corners of the room, smells rot and honey. In the mirror, she sees the reflection of a man with a hook instead of an arm. Helen runs out of the apartment in terror. After this incident, Helen's life begins to fall apart. She loses touch with reality and has nightmares in which she sees Candyman and his victims. She begins to question her sanity, not realizing what is real and what is a figment of her imagination. Candyman seems to become more and more real. He appears in the most unexpected places, haunting Helen and terrifying her. He tries to convince her that she is the reincarnation of his beloved, the same white woman whose portrait he once painted. He wants her to join him so that together they can rule the world of fear and pain. Helen's relationship with her husband Trevor begins to fray. He doesn't believe her stories about Candyman and believes she is suffering from a mental disorder. He begins to distance himself from her, finding comfort in the arms of another woman. Helen soon becomes the prime suspect in a series of crimes. The police believe she has gone mad and is committing them in imitation of the legend of Candyman. She is arrested and placed in a mental hospital. In the hospital, Helen is abused and humiliated. The doctors do not believe her story of Candyman and consider her a danger to society. They try to treat her with strong drugs, but this only worsens her condition. Despite all the difficulties, Helen does not give up hope to prove her innocence and expose Candyman. She escapes from the hospital and returns to Cabrini Green to put an end to him once and for all. At Cabrini Green, Helen is confronted by Candyman. He shows her his true nature, his pain and anger. He tells her of his tragic fate and how racial hatred and prejudice turned him into a monster. Candyman offers Helen a deal: if she joins him, he will stop doing it. But Helen refuses. She realizes that the only way to stop Candyman is to destroy his legend, to stop believing in him to end the final scene. Helen sacrifices herself to save little Anthony, the same boy she met in Cabrini Green. She throws herself into the fire, destroying Candyman and his lair. After this incident, Helen becomes an urban legend. Her name begins to be whispered in Cabrini Green. It is said that if you repeat her name 5 times in front of a mirror, she will appear and protect you from evil. Trevor, Helen's husband, is deeply affected by her absence. He realizes that he did not trust her or support her in her time of need. He feels guilty for having distanced himself from her and betrayed her. At the end of the movie, Trevor stands in front of the bathroom mirror. He looks at his reflection and says Helen's name 5 times. Helen's reflection appears in the mirror. She smiles at him, forgiving him for everything. But behind her back, Candyman appears. His story continues. Helen is a complex and contradictory character. She is an intelligent, educated, and determined woman, but at the same time naive and gullible. She doesn't realize how deeply rooted racial prejudice is in American society. She thinks she can understand and control the legend of Candyman, but ends up falling victim to it herself. Candyman is a tragic character. He is a victim of racial hatred and violence. His story is a story of how prejudice and fear can turn a man into a monster. He seeks revenge and recognition, but his methods are cruel and inhumane. The movie explores themes of race, class, gender, and fear. It shows how urban legends shape our perception of the world and how they can be used to control and manipulate people. The movie also raises questions about the nature of evil and how we can fight it.